Hey, how's it going, guys? It is Fox98 here. Welcome back to a brand new video and another F1 debate for you guys today here on the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Hungarian Grand Prix. If you've ever joined the video, feel free to drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And whilst we're building up to the Belgian Grand Prix, I'm fast forwarding to last weekend for the Hungarian Grand Prix. And yeah, apologies that this video hasn't come out a little bit sooner. I've literally just been so busy in my life. I literally just have not had time to click the record button. I don't remember actually the last time I clicked the record button, but we're here doing this now. So let's get straight into it and not waste any of your time. So qualifying, we started off with the weekend actually. We started off with a brand new format. We had 11 sets of tyres only for each of the drivers instead of the normal 13 dry tyres that they get. And then qualifying, we had a set of hards for Q1, mediums for Q2, and softs for Q3. Now, this format, after just seeing it in the one race overall, was a 50-50 split for me. I think I didn't like the fact that they were given less dry tyres. I think, personally, just not seeing the cars out there as much during the Friday isn't really what you want to see. And especially for the fans that pay to go out to watch these races, you know, you want to be able to get cars on track for as long as you possibly can. And of course, there are mitigating circumstances on when and where you'll be able to get cars on track constantly or whether you won't get them on track. And, you know, like, for example, if it was raining in practice, you know, no one's really going to go out there and practice and start bombing it around in the wet, especially if it's not going to be a wet, you know, race weekend. It may be just a one session like FP1, for example. In Hungary, why bother wasting a set of inters, potentially crashing the car, and crucially, just using up mileage on your engines, which you've got very limited amounts of for the purpose of just, well, yeah, I went the fastest on intermediates in Q1. There's no point. There's absolutely no point at all in doing any of that. So maybe we could look at addressing that rather than cutting out the amount of dry tyres that they use, because like everybody on like Friday literally only used one set of tyres in both sessions. And as much as it unpredictabilized the order, it didn't really do well for track action because people were not really going out as often because they couldn't like strap on a set of mediums, do a couple of laps, then strap on a set of softs and go a couple of laps and so forth. So in FP3, it was obviously a bit more entertaining because some did medium and soft and then some did double soft or whatever. So that was okay, but overall, I think it just needs a little bit of more thought in terms of if we're going to have a weekend where, you know, in some circumstances, like in the races in the desert, like Bahrain and Saudi and stuff, we're never going to need the wet tyres. So maybe we can cut back on tyre compounds for those races and say, right, instead of having, you know, the wets and the inters for every single team, we'll give you an extra set of dries, say, and then you give yourself more options of track time running. I just think, you know, it's more so for the fans side of things. You know, they paid the money to come out here and watch these Grand Prix races. I've paid my money in the past to go and watch races for Formula One, and I'm there to watch cars on track. I'm not there to see them in the garage trying to manage how many tyres they've got and the fact they can't go out on track because they haven't got any. No, not quite for me. But the hard, medium and soft qualifying was awesome. I absolutely loved it and I already miss it. I definitely want that to become a permanent thing. It was great fun. I mean, we saw in Q1 that the Alfa Romeos were the fastest. We saw that in Q2 that the McLarens were the quickest, and then Q3 was the Mercedes the quickest. And it brought so much unpredictability because we had teams that were shining on different tyre compounds, and you had to make sure that you were at least quick enough on all three different types of compounds to get obviously into Q3 and then to get you shoots out for pole. And speaking of pole, Lewis Hamilton became the third driver, not the third, why am I saying the third? The fourth driver this season to claim a pole position. Of course, Verstappen and Perez have both had poles. Leclerc has taken one pole position at Baku, and Hamilton this time around getting pole in Q3. I was super happy by that, and then I fell into a trap, a very deep and dark trap, which was that this is going to be an amazing race. We're going to have Hamilton versus Verstappen as we've had in 2021. We're going to have Norris probably up there as well because he was brilliant all weekend long. We're going to have the three of the best drivers, in-form drivers, okay, right now, just gunning it out, going for it. it was Red Bull's most dominant win of the season so far. Yeah, the race was bad. Unfortunately, it just was. It wasn't a great race, but Hungary has kind of changed for me. And I don't know whether it's changed for you guys, and it might have, it might not have. Hungary, for me, doesn't really... I don't really call Hungary Monaco without the barriers anymore, because I find it's actually a lot more of an easier circuit to overtake on now than it ever has been, and that's simply because of the new regulations, of course. Yes, granted, if you don't get the move done into turn 1, or you don't do it into turn 2/3, you're stuck behind the driver for the rest of the lap, and you've got to wait again. So, in terms of opportunities to pass, granted, I get it, there's not many opportunities. But in terms of actual overtaking, now this year, I think we only had something like 16 on-track overtakes, which is, again, rubbish. But I'll get on to why that was slightly compromised in a second. But, we had Russell. He started down in P18 on the grid, the second to last row of the grid, and he fights his way all the way back up to 6th place. Now, yes, good, well done. He's in a great, I say great Mercedes car, but he's in a quick car, okay? He's in a car quick enough to get points. But the fact is, he still beat both the Aston Martins. He still beat both the Ferraris. And, in terms of his passing, yeah, when he was in a DRS train, it was a little bit difficult. But the crucial thing for him was strategy. And I think the reason that we saw quite a ball fest of a Grand Prix is because the entire race was dictated via strategy. Now, let's face it, everyone's been calling for more pit stops, more strategy, windows in the F1 in the calendar, and we've seen some races where strategy has worked out beautifully and given us a lot of fun. But this was the circumstance where strategy didn't work out and it didn't give us any fun because everybody was just managing. In my opinion, anyway, they were just managing constantly. And of course, it's a high downforce circuit. The temperatures were really, really high, so a lot of cooling needed to be done on the cars. But the thing that really kind of annoyed me the most was that it was like a 2-stop race. I think some people did. I don't think anyone did a 3-stop, but it was a heavy management type of 2-stop race. So no one could really push and attack, which is why then as well we saw a lot of offset strategies. It was almost like, right, we can't overtake them on track because we're basically level on pace, but everything's overheating. Let's just do it in the pit stops. Let's either pit 2 laps early, or we'll pit 5 laps later and then have fresher tyres and then go for it towards the end of the Grand Prix. And of course, Verstappen was in a world of his own, really, and obviously cruised to victory. So, that's basically my race overview. I really loved the new qualifying format. I don't like the tyre reductions, though. The race itself was pretty boring. Nothing really happened, too crazy, to be honest, apart from maybe the start, which the start's always crazy for any race. So let's go talk about the teams then. Starting with Alfa Romeo. I'm a little bit upset for Alfa Romeo, I'm not going to lie. They had a brilliant qualifying session. Their car was quick, but Guan Yu Zhou, I think when it comes to learning off of your more experienced teammates like Valtteri Bottas, I don't think Bottas meant to tell you about the bowling technique to be used at the Hungaroring, because obviously a poor start from him, and then he basically just catapults Ricciardo into the Alpines, wipes them out of the Grand Prix, wipes himself basically out of the Grand Prix, and then Bottas had a very difficult Grand Prix because he got compromised from the first corner accident as well. It was a shame. They had such a good weekend. They had a great car, and it was really quick in all tyre compounds. Zhou even out-qualified Charles Leclerc on legit pace in quali on soft tyres. So you can tell that they had a good car. They just weren't able to maximise their race, and they ruined it from the first lap. So it's a little bit of a shame, but is it signs to come for Alfa Romeo? Maybe the likes of Zandvoort after the summer break will be a great circuit for them. You never know, but it seemed that track just suited them, and it's a massive missed opportunity for a team that needs every single point that they can get their hands on. Daniel Ricciardo and the AlphaTauri scene, great recovery race from Ricciardo. Of course, he was the one that got involved in the incident at the first corner, getting rear-ended and then going into the Alpines. But his debut was brilliant. I mean, I kind of expected him to out-qualify Tsunoda, which he did in Q1 by like 13 thousandths of a second. But to go and have an issue like he did in the first corner of the lap, then to go ahead and recover that, and then to do an almightily long stint, I think it was on the medium tyres, I think it was like 40 odd laps, and he closed up to Bottas at the end and finished exactly where he started. For me, that's the perfect debut for Ricciardo. That's exactly what you needed to do, and he looked like a really, really impressive showing. Of course, we need to see how he gets on the rest of the season, but for now, that was a very good showing from Daniel Ricciardo. Yuki Tsunoda, he didn't really do too much this weekend. Bit of an off weekend for him. Maybe the pressure of Ricciardo is going to come to him, but we'll have to see if he can respond to it. Now, Sergio Perez. I'm going to be talking about Red Bull next. Obviously, Red Bull brought a brand new upgrade to the Hungarian Grand Prix. They brought a brand new side pod inlet, which basically was a very narrow inlet with a sort of like a T-tray undercut that they've always had to allow the airflow to go into the side pod itself. It definitely worked in race trim. Red Bull obviously sacrificed qualifying pace to basically set their car up for the race because their car is quick enough to win a Grand Prix anyway. But I saw a stat from Formula 1 about a couple of hours ago, and it was on about how Perez had basically gained 40 positions in the previous 5 races. It was almost like basically G'ing Perez up. Perez shouldn't be in the position that he's in the first place. And yeah, well done. Perez made it into Q3, which is, you know, the standard for the fastest car on the grid and probably one of the most dominant Formula 1 cars ever built. But then to only get P9 on the road, like, he really needs to work himself in qualifying and get better, because that's a 1-2 that was easily there for Red Bull. You could see that Perez had the pace for a 1-2 finish, but he just wasn't able to capitalise it, and Norris was able to hold him off. And whilst we're on Lando Norris, should we talk about McLaren? Why not? They were brilliant. McLaren were excellent this weekend, and it basically now pretty much confirms McLaren are 100% back now. Obviously, they're not winning races, but they're now getting consecutive podium finishes. They're, for me, quicker than Aston Martin. They're quicker than Ferrari, and they're about level with Mercedes. I think this weekend Mercedes was quicker than McLaren, but Mercedes didn't maximise the weekend. McLaren maximised their weekend. They had a great qualifying session, locking out the second row. Piastri, despite the fact being a rookie and also having a season out of Formula 1 the previous season, was so calm at the start. The way that he anticipated that Verstappen was going to send it and drive Hamilton wide. Norris was on that outside too. He just calmly and collectively just took that inside line. Really senior type of driving from him, and he's been by far one of the best drivers of the season. Very underrated though, and goes under the radar, but with McLaren now being strong, it's definitely put them in the right window. Shame for Piastri that he suffered from floor damage. That obviously really compromised him in probably P4. I think Perez would have passed him anyway. Hamilton maybe a little bit more of a struggle, but you never know, because the Mercedes, as I'll get on to next, was actually quite good in the final stint. But yeah, McLaren 100% back, and they're definitely now in the fight for second, third in the championship. I genuinely do believe that if this is what McLaren are, and they've still got another big package to come. Remember, they were on a 3-stage upgrade process. They had the first upgrade in Austria, the second in Silverstone. They were meant to have their third at the Hungarian Grand Prix, but they actually delayed it till after the summer break because they wanted to just analyse the new bits they put on first beforehand and basically fine-tune what they've got to come next, which is a fair enough thing for them to do. But whatever they've done, it works beautifully, so I wouldn't stop if I were them. Mercedes, they didn't maximise their weekend. It was a strong circuit for them. So what happened then? Well, I mean, we saw Hamilton do a Lewis Hamilton-esque pole position lap on Saturday. So for the rest of the season, because the races are bad, I might as well just watch the qualifying again. So I'll just keep watching Hamilton's pole qualifying and listen to all the commentators screaming and celebrating like I was. But off the start, I mean, I thought initially, I heard that Hamilton had clutch problems. He didn't. He just didn't get enough of a run down towards turn 1. Maybe it looked like the second phase of the start was a little bit odd. Maybe he had a bit more drag. Obviously, he lost out to Verstappen, forcing him wide, and then lost out to the 2 McLarens afterwards. From that point onwards then, it was a difficult race for him because he was in the dirty air, and Mercedes did not maximise their cooling. I believe they had a couple of cooling levers closed. Actually, the Mercedes needed a couple more bits of the car opened up for cooling, and it meant that he had to back off for temperature issues. His pit stop on the hard tyres, I don't quite know why he lost 10 odd seconds, because he was about 3.7 behind Norris. He undercut Norris and then lost about 10 seconds after that because Norris pitted, and of course he undercut Piastri in all of it. So you'd expect Hamilton to be right behind, in front of Norris, then in front of Piastri. That didn't happen. I think it was something to do with being overcautious on the beginning of the stint or overcautious with the engine cooling. We clearly saw, though, that as the race went on, the Mercedes was by far the quicker car. On the medium stint, he was catching Piastri, he was catching Norris. Of course, Norris literally was in DRS of Hamilton because Lewis then stayed out long on his middle stint. And then again, he caught up to Piastri, passed him, caught back to Perez, and him and Perez were trying to get closer to Norris. And it was like 5 seconds at the end, so we gained like 15 seconds. But it was clear that Mercedes didn't maximise the cooling package. And when that Mercedes was in the clearer air, it was a lot more competitive. So not really maximising it for them. Aston Martin and Ferrari, we might as well do them together because both of them were nowhere. They were awful this weekend. I was expecting a lot more, though, from Aston. A hell of a lot more from them. They've really slipped off these past few races now, and it's very worrying for them. But that's the development race. You know, McLaren have outdeveloped Aston Martin. Mercedes have been outdeveloping Aston Martin. Ferrari, I mean, they were kind of level-ish with Aston, but I would argue they've maximised their car more than Aston. This is the circuit where I thought Aston would basically do something and be a bit more competitive, and I predicted them to be in the fight with Mercedes or McLaren in that aspect. That wasn't the case. It was actually their worst performance of the season. I don't really know where they go from here. Both Ferrari and Aston Martin need to be looking over their shoulders now and figuring out what they can do with their packages, because right now, for me, McLaren will beat both of them in the Constructors' Championship with ease. Because if Ferrari have got a good car, then Leclerc is, the team leader. He'll drive that car further forwards. Sainz is very, very strong and will get you your points. The problem with Aston Martin, and why I've been saying this, is Aston Martin have had a great start to the season, but they've only had one driver putting in great performances through that period of the season. Alonso. Lance Stroll hasn't been doing that, and the fact that Stroll hasn't been doing that, it's now obviously compromised them, and now I can see McLaren jumping the pair of them, and that's just kind of my straight honesty on that point. But that's pretty much everything for the Hungarian Grand Prix debate-wise. Now let's get into the Belgian Grand Prix. This weekend, it's a sprint weekend. We've got some rain in the air, so it could be a little bit spicy. So who's going to perform well and who won't? Well, obviously Red Bull are going to perform well and will most likely win for the 800 millionth time in a row. I actually saw a very, very depressing stat come out from Red Bull, actually. Now, obviously, they broke the record, which congratulations to them, by the way, on doing that. Massive, massive achievement. 12 victories in a row for that team is incredible stuff. But what makes it even more incredible, if Mercedes didn't win the 2022 Brazilian Grand Prix, Red Bull's winning streak right now would be 22 races. Yeah, that's depressing to just think of. I mean, I've said it so many times before. You can't not discredit Red Bull for what... You can't hate Red Bull, for what they've done. Like, I just hate Red Bull in general. Like, I just don't like Verstappen. I don't like Horner. I don't like Marco. So I just don't really like the team. But you cannot go unnoticed on what amazing performances they've done to build such a brilliant car and put on a run like that, which is just outstanding from them. And at the end of the day, it is up to the rivals to catch them. And if they can't catch them, then Red Bull will keep dominating. And that's the point of Formula One. You really got to be, rather than hating Red Bull, even though I did shout a lot on Twitter of me not liking Red Bull and I'm bored and etc., you've kind of got to shout at the other teams and go, please, for the love of God, you're not doing good enough. And you lot, by not being competitive versus Red Bull, are ruining the sport. And that's good to say when you're not getting angry in the middle of a Grand Prix about it all. So yeah, Red Bull will be quicker as per usual in Spa. McLaren, it should suit them. I mean, high-speed cornering is where McLaren are definitely at a strong point. So I'd expect McLaren to do very well here, as they have been doing now, really, in general. I think it'll make them the second fastest car. Ferrari, I do expect them to bounce back here at Belgium. They've got great straight line speed, Ferrari. They've always have done. And it was similar to Silverstone. Like, their race pace wasn't brilliant, but their qualifying pace, and because we've got two qualifyings, this should definitely help Ferrari. They've always decently had good straight line speed, so I expect them to do well. Mercedes, I don't know. The problem with Mercedes is they always start things off slow. Fridays, they're bad. And then come Saturday, when they've been in the simulator overnight and analysed the data, they then obviously improve their car. With sprint weekends, you can't do that. You've got an FP1 session, and that's about it. However, of course, they do have upgrades for this weekend. Of course, as I'm recording this video, Mercedes have got a brand new low downforce rear wing. They've got a brand new side pod inlet, and they've also just got brand new side pods in general. And I think they've got a brand new floor body as well on that car. So a lot of upgrades for Mercedes. So maybe that one might help them get it in the right window straight away. Who knows? I also do expect Aston to be slow. High-speed circuits are not their prowess. And I think it'll be a struggle for them. And hopefully they can try and get a bit further forwards, but I don't really see it that much. And they might be in a battle with Alpine. Of course, Alpine, 2 double DNFs in a row. They really need some luck to go their way. And maybe they'll be in front of Aston Martin. Maybe not Alonso. Alonso's, be able to get more out of any car. But keep an eye on Williams as well, because obviously in Silverstone, we saw Albon and Sargent absolutely shine through there. And here in Belgium, this is another brilliant opportunity for Williams to score some more points. But that is it, guys, for the F1 debate for the Hungarian Grand Prix. If you ended up enjoying the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. Let me know what you thought of the race in the comment section down below. If you've got any thoughts and opinions that you want to say, it's all there for you to say. So until then, I will see you guys for the next F1 debate after the Belgian Grand Prix. Take care all. Peace.